Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Magach 6B Gal, of which a currently 9.0 BR, rank 6 Squadron vehicle in the Israeli Ground Forces tech tree. In this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about it, including its stats, how it plays, I'll give its strengths and weaknesses, I'll go over some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation, and if I feel this vehicle is worth grinding for, or purchasing, or none of the above. As always, please consider subscribing if you'd like more content like this, as I greatly appreciate it. And finally, I wish Ryan Oko and his father the best of luck going forward. I and everyone watching this video are definitely pulling for the two of you. Now with that said, let's get into the review. To start, I'll place a stat card here on the side of the screen. Things to know are its power to weight ratio, armor thickness plus ERA, and number of MGs. Now for how it plays. The Magach 6B Gal is essentially just an Israeli modified M60 that is heavily covered in ERA and has a new cannon, as well as new ammunition. What this means is that it is a relatively slow, large vehicle that packs a punch, largely thanks to its M426 APF SDS shell that can go through a maximum of 430mm of armor. It can also take a good amount of punishment as well, due to the excessive usage of Blazer ERA along the entire front of the vehicle, plus the side of the turret. Though Blazer ERA isn't as good as the American ERA on comparable M60 variants, it is still better than nothing and will be able to protect against a large amount of hits and shell types, allowing the 6B Gal to survive far more hits than most tanks at this BR. What this means is that the Magach 6B Gal can easily be at or near the front lines of the battle, successfully penning enemy tanks while staying relatively well protected. Again, Blazer ERA isn't the best, and could even be considered among the worst ERA, so don't take its presence on the 6B Gal as a sign that you are immune to enemy projectiles, because you aren't. Rather, it should be protected against Heat FS and highly angled solid shot projectiles, which make you fairly tanky, though not enough where you should be free to be out of cover more than normal. But this aside, the 6B Gal also features very nice gunner sights that can switch to thermals and have up to 12 times zoom, making the 6B Gal a fantastic sniper. In theory, you can flank with the 6B Gal and pick off enemy vehicles from behind cover and concealment, all while being fairly well protected at a range. The only difficulty in executing this plan is that the 6B Gal has around 14 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio, making it among the slowest tanks at this BR, though it should still move just quickly enough if you don't expose your position too often. Regardless, the Magach 6B Gal's role can be summed up in a few ways. It can be a frontline tank in a down tier, a sniper or flanker if played smart, and can even be a brawler in a pinch, though it should only really do that when in a down tier and if necessary, as your reload rate isn't much to write home about at nearly 9 seconds with an untrained crew, and there are enough gaps in the ERA that they can be pinpointed at close range. Still, the combination of the nasty M426 APF SDS shell, as well as its relatively good armor, make the Magach 6B Gal a powerful tank no matter how you decide to use it. Now with that being said, let's get to its strengths and weaknesses. And first, for its strengths. It has the excellent aforementioned M426 APF SDS shell that has up to 430mm of armor pen. Second, it has literally tons of ERA covering large portions of the front and side of the vehicle, leading to fairly good protection, even if only for a few shots. For its third strength, it has thermal sights for the gunner, which even though they are Gen 1, thermals at this BR are not guaranteed. For its fourth strength, it has a good variety of shells, including 2 types of APF STS, 1 type of Heat FS, HESH, and smoke shells. For its fifth strength, it has a laser rangefinder / laser warning system combination. Beyond this, it features fairly good gunner's optics at this BR, with between 6 and 12 times zoom. Additionally, the 6B Gal features a commander sight, although only with night vision. For its seventh strength, the 6B Gal features 20 smoke grenades, which is a high amount. And finally, it features 4 MGs, including an HMG mounted near the base of the cannon. Now for its weaknesses, it is a fairly slow vehicle at this BR. It isn't absolutely horrible, but it's definitely in the bottom half of similar BR vehicles. Second, while the Blazer ERA is definitely helpful, Blazer tends to be among the worst in-game in terms of ERA. Additionally, the ERA does not cover the sides of the hull or the rear of the hull and turret. For its third weakness, the 6B Gal is fairly tall, and will thus be a larger target than comparative Russian tanks. And finally, the ammo racks on this vehicle are huge, making an ammo rack explosion fairly likely when successfully penned. Now with all that said, let's get into how I rate this vehicle. And first, for armament, I give it an 8.25 out of 10. The amount of armor pen with the M426 APF SDS shell is prodigious, with upwards of 430mm at max. Combine this with its other shell types, its tons of MGs, and middling but still not terrible reload rate, and you get a winner in terms of armament. It isn't perfect as it still only features a 105mm cannon, but it's better to get through enemy armor and deal slightly less damage than not to get through at all. The Magach 6B Gal can tussle with the best of them at its BR and above, and has easily among the most potent cannon ammo combinations in every match that it will play. Now for its mobility, I give it a 3.75 out of 10. While not absolutely terrible, the Magach 6B Gal has mediocre mobility, which is the result of a high weight of over 53 tons and only a 750 horsepower engine. This means that the 6B Gal has only 14.1 horsepower per ton. Thankfully, it puts it down to the ground fairly well and feels a touch faster than its stats imply, but it is still a slug in a world filled with XM1s, Super AMX-30s, and a ton of light tanks. For survivability, I give it a 6.75 out of 10. The ample usage of Blazer ERA on the 6B Gal gives it literally tons of extra protection, especially at a BR in which Heat FS usage is prevalent. Further, the 6B Gal has plenty of steel underneath the ERA, with 230mm of armor at most on the front of the turret, and over 100mm in the highly angled frontal hull. While APF SDS will still typically get through, especially on the sides of this vehicle where armor is the lowest, it is still much better protected than most and will withstand a surprisingly large amount of punishment, especially in a down tier. The biggest slight of this vehicle is that it lacks composite armor while others are gaining it, but the Blazer ERA is at least a way to make up for that at least a bit. Now overall, I give it a 6.75 out of 10. If not for the mobility, this vehicle would likely be at or above 7 out of 10 overall. It can deal damage, it can take damage, and at least it can move around the battlefield, if only a bit more slowly than pretty much everyone else. The 6B Gal is a great overall package and has the important bits where it counts, namely in the armament and armor, with the speed being just enough to be able to get by and cause a ruckus on the battlefield. Now with that said, do I recommend the Magach 6B Gal? With Squadron vehicles, I'm always iffy giving a recommendation, simply because they can only research from the rank below to the rank above them without penalty, and they do not receive the RP and SL bonuses that premium vehicles would. If you decide to purchase with GE, this basically means that you're spending GE on a vehicle that doesn't benefit the grind any more than a regular tech tree vehicle. Plus, when considering the other Squadron vehicles that exist, namely the Leopard 2PL, M1A1 AIM, T80 UK, Object 122 MC, and even the Swedish T80U, the 6B Gal is a tough sell. More so, it has to compete against the premium Schokal-Delet and Merkava Mark II-D, which will both be substantially better if you intend to grind the Israeli ground tech tree, as they offer greater RP and SL rewards, being that they're premium vehicles, plus they don't have RP penalties for researching too far below them. In short, I actually really like the Magach 6B Gal, and if it was a premium, I would say to purchase it, but unfortunately it is not. It is essentially just a regular tech tree vehicle and how it functions. As such, I would recommend to not purchase it with Golden Eagles unless you, for whatever reason, really need a good vehicle to go into a 9.0 BR lineup next to other similar BR tanks. Further, I would recommend to grind the M1A1 AIM, Leopard 2PL, and T80 UK before grinding for the Magach 6B Gal, simply because they are at the top of the heap in terms of Squadron vehicles. I think that the Magach 6B Gal is among the best tanks in any match that it will be in, especially if it stays at 9.0 BR. But it isn't a regular tech tree grinder, and it isn't one of the currently big 3 Squadron vehicles, so I would say to prioritize those ones first, and not to purchase it with Golden Eagles unless it's very cheap, or unless you absolutely need it for some strange reason. The Magach 6B is a great tank, but it's a victim of circumstance, being surrounded by many other higher BR Squadron vehicles that are great in their own right, as well as premium tanks within its own tech tree that will help the grind substantially more than the 6B Gal ever will. Now with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, as those would all mean the world to me. But either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care everyone, and best of luck, Ryan.